Welcome to the Quotive Corner. Today's quote comes from someone whose work sits at the intersection of research and human candor. And this particular line of hers is one that lands differently, depending on whether you're in a leadership role or have ever been on the receiving end of a leader who was too comfortable with silence. Brave leaders are never silent around hard things. Our job is to excavate the unsaid. That's Brené Brown, research professor, author, and one of the most widely listened to voices on vulnerability, courage, and leadership of the last 2 decades. She delivered this line in her 2019 Netflix special, The Call to Courage, and it appears throughout her book Dare to Lead, published in 2018. Now, what is she actually saying, and what does it ask of the people it's directed at? The first sentence is the more straightforward of the two, and it sets up the second beautifully. Brave leaders are never silent around hard things. The operative word is never, not rarely. Not only when they feel ready. Not only when the timing is right and the room is receptive and the outcome seems manageable. Never. Which means the standard Brown is setting isn't situational, it's dispositional. It's a description of who brave leaders are, not just what they occasionally do when conditions cooperate. Most people have experienced the alternative, the leader who goes quiet precisely when clarity is most needed, the manager who senses the tension in the room and steers the conversation somewhere safer, the executive who knows a difficult truth and withholds it in the name of timing or morale or not wanting to make things worse, the parent, the mentor, the coach who can see what needs to be said and chooses again and again not to say it. That silence is rarely malicious. It's usually a form of comfort-seeking dressed up as consideration. And the people on the receiving end of it, the team, the organization, the family, pay a price that the silent leader never fully sees, because the cost accumulates quietly in the gap between what is known and what is said. Brown went further in the full context of the call to courage, adding, "What is the thing that's not being said?" That requires courage and vulnerability. That additional framing is important because it reveals the inner work behind the outer behavior. Excavating the unsaid isn't just about speaking up. It starts with the willingness to ask the question honestly. What is actually going on here that nobody is naming? What is the thing in this room, this relationship, this organization, that everyone knows and nobody is saying out loud? That question, put to yourself before you even open your mouth, is where courageous leadership actually begins. And it requires both courage, the willingness to name something that carries social risk, and vulnerability, the willingness to be wrong about it, to have the conversation fail, to not know in advance how it will land. The second sentence is where the quote becomes most interesting and most demanding. Our job is to excavate the unsaid. Excavate, not surface, not mention, not occasionally acknowledge. Excavate, a word that implies deliberate, effortful digging through layers to reach something that has been buried. The unsaid doesn't sit on the surface waiting to be picked up. It's underground. It's the thing that has been covered over, layer by politeness, by conflict avoidance, by the accumulated social pressure to not be the one who makes things uncomfortable. Excavation is active, sustained work. It's not a single conversation. It's a practice. And notice the pronoun, our job. Not the CEO's job exclusively. Not the job of the most senior person in the room. Our job, meaning anyone who takes on the identity of a leader, which Brown defines broadly as anyone who takes responsibility for recognizing the potential in people and ideas and has the courage to develop that potential. By her definition, leadership isn't a title. It's a choice. And if it's a choice, then the obligation to excavate the unsaid is available and required of anyone who makes it. What kinds of things live in the unsaid? In organizations, the failing project nobody wants to be the first to name as failing, the interpersonal conflict that's bleeding into team performance while everyone pretends it isn't there, the strategic direction that most people privately doubt but publicly support because the leader seems committed to it, the feedback that would genuinely help someone develop but never gets delivered because giving it feels unkind. In families, the tension that everyone navigates around but nobody addresses. The concern about a loved one that gets expressed only in whispers between other family members but never directly. The difficult truth that has been circling for years, always just one honest conversation away from being resolved. In every case, the unsaid doesn't disappear because it isn't named. It operates. It shapes decisions, strains relationships, distorts trust. It just does all of that without the possibility of being addressed, because it hasn't been made visible. Excavating it doesn't automatically resolve it, but leaving it buried guarantees that it keeps working its damage underground. In a prior episode, we discussed how Howard W. Newton gave us the observation that tact is the knack of making a point without making an enemy, that the goal of a difficult conversation isn't to detonate, but to land. Brown's instruction is the precondition for that. You have to be willing to have the conversation at all before tact becomes relevant. The most skillfully delivered hard truth still requires the courage to deliver it, and the courage to deliver it starts with the willingness to name what's actually happening rather than working around it. There is also something worth naming about the relationship between excavating the unsaid and genuine respect. It can feel, in the moment, like the kind thing to do is to stay quiet, to protect people from difficult information, to avoid disrupting what feels like equilibrium. But that kind of protection is often patronizing in ways that aren't immediately obvious. It assumes that people can't handle the truth about their own situation. It makes the decision for them about what they deserve to know. The leader who is brave enough to name the hard thing is, in a real sense, treating the people in the room as capable adults who can engage with reality, which is a deeper form of respect than the comfort of a managed silence. Now, the honest counterpoint, because this show doesn't skip it. Not every unsaid thing needs to be excavated immediately or publicly. Timing matters, context matters. The leader who names every hard thing in every moment, regardless of who is present or what the circumstances are, has mistaken volume for courage. Brown herself is careful about this. The goal of naming hard things is always in service of the people and the work, not in service of the leader's self-image as someone who tells it like it is. Courage without skill, without care for how the truth lands, without genuine regard for the people in the conversation, that's just disruption. Brave and skillful are not the same thing, and both are required. But the failure mode of most leaders and most people in most relationships is not too much excavation. It's too little. The silence accumulates far more readily than the courage to break it. Which is why Brown's instruction still stands as a genuine challenge rather than an easy affirmation. The unsaid is always somewhere in the room. The question is, who is willing to go looking for it? Thanks for spending a few minutes here at the Quotive Corner. If this one made you think of something in your own life, a team, a relationship, a conversation that has been quietly waiting to be named, that's worth some honest consideration. And as always, wisdom isn't in the quote, it's in the reflection. Looking forward to seeing you in the next one.